In this video, I'd like to talk about bump, displacement, and normal maps. These three kinds of maps are essentially different techniques for doing the same thing, arriving at the same goal. And that is to add texture to an object. We can use these maps for creating pores in skin, or roughness in wood, or roughness to a mountainside, or rivets to the side of an airplane. Anything that has detail that looks like bumps and grooves and wrinkles, things like that, can be added with these three kinds of maps. Now they each have their own individual strengths and weaknesses, and we'll get into that. So let's start off with the bump map, which is kind of the simplest one. So if I select that sphere, I'm going to assign a material to it first of all. I'll just click here and give it a blend material. You can see the shininess start up. And we'll go to the material tab right here. And we're going to assign a map to this bump channel right here. So I'm going to go here and we're going to choose the cloth procedural texture. Okay, and it's going to be used as a bump. So you can see the image is in this channel, and then we could also affect the bump depth by moving this slider. See that when I go this direction, it's going negatively, so it's going to look like it's inside out kind of from what we might expect. Or we could, if we go into the positive territory, then you can see we're changing the height of it. So if we click to our input image here, then we can see our familiar image here. The bump map makes use of black and white. So if we were to add color to these channels, it wouldn't have any effect on the way it's being used, right? It would look for the luminance in the channel. So the only thing that matters here is how dark or light it is. Okay, so if you change how light or dark it is, you can see that's affecting the look of it, obviously, and so are all these other channels able to affect the look of it. But yeah, a bump map uses black and white. And because of this, bump maps are also the easiest to produce. Like if you're painting in Photoshop, it's easy to paint black or white, and white means raise it up out of the surface, and black means press it down into the surface. Of course, a bump map is really just an illusion, and if we get in close to it, we can see that on the horizon line it remains smooth. Okay, if I'm looking at this sub B there, you can see that it's not actually displacing anything or changing the shape of anything. It's the illusion works best when you're facing into it. It breaks down on the silhouette. Okay, so the next one we'll take a look at is the displacement. So displacements, you're not going to find a channel here or an attribute for that on this node. Displacements happen at a higher level, so we have to go up a node. Okay, so I'm going to click here. See, we're going into this blend, and this is where we put it here, displacement material. So just got to remember, go up one level to displacement material. And so let's put into here the same thing, and of course we're not going to see it right away. We can only see displacements when we render. So let's take a look at a render. If we go here, just refresh that. So now you can see the effects of the displacement. Now we can only see this looking through the Maya software renderer. If we try to render it with Maya hardware, we're not going to see it. Right? That's the same renderer that we're using in the viewport. So Maya, the viewport 2.0. But that doesn't render displacements. But the Maya software does, and Maya hardware I don't think does either. That's not going to do it. So the Maya software will do it. Okay, so you can see here it literally subdivides the geometry and pushes it out. So it holds up very nicely on the silhouette. Of course, you can see inside it doesn't look quite as clean and distinct as the bump map, because it's, these are actually, we're seeing the edges of polygons, right? It's subdivided the geometry and pushed out the subdivided faces. So we can see there's this kind of a roughness to it. And the displacement will really add to your render time. These are a lot more expensive to render than the bump map. But the displacement map, like the bump map, is just a black and white map. And so again, it's an easy map to create. Now the normal map, on the other hand, there's a different process you go through to create that. Normal maps are not black and white. They look kind of usually like they have a light blue color with a little bit of fringy color in there. That's because they have 3 channels, and those channels are used to bend the normals in different directions. So let's create a normal map now for this third sphere. So to create that map, we're actually going to bake out the displacement map here and then use it to create the map. So right now this has a displacement map, right? Even though we can't see it. But if we go into modify, convert, and tear this off, there's an option here for displacement to polygons. We will use this one. So I'm just going to click that, and you can see these are the polygons that were generated that we saw in the render. Look in the outliner, translated. Let's translate it exactly 32. Our new one, we'll translate that one over 32. Okay, so they're in the same place. Now we have our third sphere underneath this new displaced sphere. Okay, they're both there. Now if we go up here to the rendering tab, then we go under texturing, no, there it is, lighting, shading, baking, transfer maps. We're going to create a normal map by using this baking interface, and that came up over here. Okay, let me open up the outliner so I can select. The target mesh is the one we want to apply to, or the map that's created get applied to. So we'll select that and we'll say add selected. This is sphere 1. Now this one too, we didn't want that one, right? So I'm going to say remove selected. So now the target mesh, sphere shape 3, or that's this one, right? And then the source mesh is the source of the details. It's where it's getting the details from, right? And that's going to be this displacement one. So we'll say, well, we don't even have to say add selected because it's already there. Okay, that's the same one. It's there. Okay, and the output we want is a normal map. Now the way this works, look, if I add to it, well, you can't see, but there's, every time I click one of these, it adds another one, right? So I can say remove that one, remove that one. All we need is this one. Clicking on these just adds to the list, right? We only need one normal map. That's all we're going for now. And, we could also add, diffuse is just the color, shaded means the color with any lights. Like if you have an object in a scene and there's a spotlight on it, or there's highlights on it, all that, the lights, the shadows that are cast onto it, everything gets baked into it if you choose shaded. Diffuse just will bake from one object to the other, whatever textures are applied to it. Okay, so you can bake a whole bunch of different things here in Maya. Now it's important to know that all these tools exist in Maya, but they're not real frequently used, honestly. There are a lot of software solutions for baking, and people will more often use solutions like XNormal, or they'll do it in ZBrush or Substance Painter or Substance Designer. Those other applications are a little more full-featured and robust and a little quicker sometimes at doing this, but you can do it all in Maya too. Anyway, so now we're seeing where the normal map is going to be put, right, which is within the images directory under your project that you're currently in. I'm going to choose a PNG for the format, and we want the map to be in tangent space. We're just going to say, look at the bottom here. We have this option now to just bake. I'm going to just click bake. And now we can look down at the bottom to see our progress. See, we're going at 2, 3. It's going to go slow, so I'm going to pause the recording and come back. Okay, it's finished, so let's take a look. I'll close this up and let's hide this. Hit 6. Now we can see the normal map has been applied. And you can see it looks similar, and it's not going to look as good as this, because it came from a mesh that was rougher to begin with, right? So this one's got that tight, smooth feeling, and this one kind of looks like the mesh that it was extracted from. Also, I forgot to give this a new material. This is running the default material. So let me just apply a new material to it. So you see the texture went away. I just applied a blend to it. And now I'll use the normal map that was generated and apply that back to this material. Okay, so I go to blend, and normal maps are applied in the same channel that bump maps are. Okay, you just change the setting. So we're going to the same channel, click on there, and this time we'll get it from a file. Okay, and we're going to say use as, not a bump, but tangent space normals. Both of these will work for normal maps. This is the more typical way. So tangent space normals, and we're going to go to the input and see it's waiting to read that file in. So here's where it is. Now look at what that texture looks like. This is what a normal map looks like. It's got 3 channels, and so typically it has this light blue color, and then depending on which way it's bending the normal, you'll see a little more red or light. You know, it's 3 color channels all giving information. So we'll say open. Okay, and by the way, whatever sample we have here, we can always just view it by looking at that. It's pretty big, but these buttons here allow you to view that. So we have now these 3. Of course, we can't see them all with the same renderer, so if we go back again to rendering, move that up, and we'll render it once again. We can see now that's just looking bad. And if you look here, it's going to look different depending on what renderer we use. So if we go to Maya hardware, you'll see that it works out better, that the normal map is working better, but of course the hardware renderer won't use render displacement. Different renderers have very different requirements for the normal maps that they like. You know, if you're building an object that will go into a game engine like say Unity, I mean, they always look terrible until you literally click a button that says fix normals. When you first read an object into Unity, you've got to fix the normals before they look decent. Every renderer has kind of got its own peculiarities and require its own tuning when it comes to normal maps. In reading the Unity documentation, for best results they recommend using a combination of both a bump and a normal map together. So bump maps are easy to create when you're using image-based texturing, right? When you're painting your texture or using Photoshop or something like that. Normal maps are more easily created when you have a high-res model and a low-res model, and you do what's called a bake. You're transferring the detail from one model to another. So bump, displacement, and normal maps are the 3 most popular ways of adding shape details to the surface of your models.